All right. Well, to the crew that's sitting here with us and to the folks that are out there virtual, my name is Jason Baker. I'm the fire chief here at Knoll Shores. Every year we try to do a hurricane preparedness class. We try to do it early in the year. We're kind of start of hurricane season right now. I think we actually feeling the remnants of a little bit of one, so it's kind of fitting. Wind blowing, clouds going by. What we're going to do is, this is Eric Heaton from National Weather Service. He comes out, he helps us out every year, giving this presentation. Like one of the best out there, can't say enough, super helpful. But what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and Eric's going to go over the slides. We can do a question and answer if anybody's got questions. If you're online virtual, you can type in questions and we'll get to them as we go along, or maybe at the end, we'll make sure we go back and haven't missed any questions. But without further delay, here is Eric, and watch him go.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody joining us. Again, we've got some folks at the town hall. Hello to everyone from home that's watching on the virtual webinar itself. So there's a couple of things to go over from a tech standpoint. Christian, go to the next slide. If you're watching from home, just move that browser over. There we go. So we all love technology that's allowed you to watch this from the comfort of your home, and then folks can see it here. If you're watching from home, you can communicate with us. As Jason mentioned, you can ask a question at any point. If you don't see the question box, just hit the orange rectangle with the white arrow, and that will make it larger. Type in your question. At the end, we have a Q&A with the audience that's in place and also you at home. So if anything doesn't make sense, please ask those questions. I mentioned that you can ask the questions. If there's any, don't worry about your microphone. There's no background noise. All of you have been muted. During the Q&A part, we will ask you to ask an audio question. I'll go over to the computer. You just raise your hand. I'll call on you if I see a raised hand, and we will unmute you for that. So today's talk is all about hurricane preparedness. As Jason mentioned, we are in the midst of hurricane season. We've already had Claudette. We had Tropical Storm Arthur last year. So we're going to talk about the impacts that any cyclone can hit in our area. The other thing we want to talk about is some ways you can prepare and some resources that you have through the Weather Service and the Hurricane Center. If you're not familiar with the Weather Service, we're located in Newport, so we're just down the road from you all. We're off of Roberts Road. That yellow shaded area, that is our coverage area for North Carolina. So we cover about the eastern quarter of North Carolina. So certainly here in the Crystal Coast, Pine Knoll Shores, Morehead City, but as far inland as ECU and Greenville, and then most of the Outer Banks up through Nags Head and Kill Devil Hills. The other parts of the state are covered by the other offices. Raleigh covers the central part of the state, and Wilmington covers down toward the southeast part of the state. We are a 24/7 operation, much like our first responders that are here today. The weather and emergencies don't happen Monday to Thursday. You get every Friday off, right? And you never work a weekend or holiday. So we're always there, 24/7. This last year, I know, has been crazy. We were still there. Our staffing, some was at home, some was in person, but during Isaias, Arthur, we ramp up. So we're there no matter what to support you, because our main mission is the protection of life and property. So again, weather happens when it's going to happen. We work rotating shifts, so that's why if you see bags under our eyes sometimes, that's why. We work a day shift, an evening shift, and then an overnight shift. And in total, we have just over 20 people at the office. If you get anything out of this talk, I'm going to talk about, don't focus on just the category of the storm. And then the other thing is our website. You have paid for this website. We fall under the Department of Commerce and NOAA. We're a federal agency, so we are the Weather Service. You have paid for us. About $7 a year of your tax money goes to the Weather Service. This is your website. Bookmark it, save it. The best way to remember it is just weather.gov. And then if you add /Morehead City, that's our local site. But if you just remember weather.gov, you can click on it anywhere in the country. If you click on Eastern North Carolina, you will get us. There's a lot of information here. I suggest you enter the city or zip code in the upper left, or click on the Google map. And then if you live here in the town, bookmark and save your location. And there's an hourly weather forecast. There's a lot of hazard information on the website itself, really good information for you to have. I should mention for those that are watching at home, if I'm going too fast, you don't have a pen, you didn't get a chance to write it down, we uploaded a copy of this presentation to the handout section. So you can download that right now. In addition, I have all of your email addresses. You've got to skip out, you've got to pick up the kids, you've got to go to work. I will follow up later this afternoon, a video recording, if it all works, and I'll post that link on YouTube. So you'll have access to all of this, either now through the handout section or as a follow-up. Speaking about access, social media, we really use that to get out to the community and wave our hands and say, this is what you need to pay attention to. Our website is great. You need to bookmark it and you need to play around with it. It doesn't wave the hands all the time and saying, hey, there's a big storm coming up 7 days from now. That's what we use Twitter and Facebook and Instagram for. Just search NWS Morehead City. We do briefings. The example on the right is Hurricane Florence. So Jason and the mayor and others get these briefings from us when there's bad weather. We record the presentation part of those briefings and post them online. If you only have 30 seconds in a day to view something, that's not for you. If you have 5 or 10 minutes and you really want to know what's going on, that is what is for you. So we put that information on YouTube. And look at the tweet to the left. When Florence was approaching, it was a Category 4 storm. Again, we don't want you just to focus on the category, but that grabbed your attention, right? Some folks let their guard down. I would get reporter calls the morning of, hey, it's only a 1 now. Should we come back? Should we not worry about it? And I wrote this tweet, do not let your guard down. Our impacts have not changed from storm surge and catastrophic flooding. So that's just the example of social media, hey, pay attention to this, or come out to Pine Knoll Shores, a town hall, we have a hurricane forum, things like that. So it's really our megaphone to the community. So as Jason mentioned, hurricane season has started. The time to prepare is now. If I gave this talk May 1st, I would say the same thing, because we have had storms as early as May. Last year we had Tropical Storm Arthur. Generally speaking, early in the year, they do tend to be weaker because the water is not quite warm enough yet. But it's a good reminder to start thinking about preparedness. This graphic shows you the peak of the season is about the middle of September. The red on this map shows the frequency of hurricanes and tropical storms, and the yellow is hurricanes. So you can see, kind of steady through the summer, then as we get into mid to late August, really ramping up with a peak in September. And then Dorian and Florence certainly were around that peak. We are equal opportunity though. We can get storms as early as May, as we mentioned, as late as October and November. We have a lot of new folks moving down to our area. So when they say, come August, hey, it looks like we made it through hurricane season, we're A-okay, remind them that the peak hasn't even happened yet. So please hammer that home. A lot of you are nodding your head, you've lived here. Not all of us have been here forever. So I need your help to spread this message. We love Jason having us out here in the community. We will do these talks forever, but we need your help to spread that word. We're just one person trying to do it, or one weather service office. So about preparedness, I mentioned our website, weather.gov/moreheadcity. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a whole bunch of icons, and one says tropical weather. That's kind of our one-stop shop for everything, including our hurricane preparedness page. There's links to that. A lot of good information on that website. What should you have in your kit? How long you should prepare? A lot of times we say at least a week now. We used to say 3 days, but we saw with Florence, the impacts can be a long, long time. We just went through a really hard year. Some of us are still suffering. Some of us still don't have the finances to go out to the store this weekend and to get everything in the kit. Take it step by step. This weekend, you get your case of water. Next weekend, you get a couple canned goods. You don't have to do it all at once. You can do it in small increments. It won't be as much financial, and then you'll be good to go with the hurricane kit. So pass that on to folks that say, hey, I can't get it all at once. That's fine. Just get a little bit each weekend, because the first thing that's going to be out at the store when the storm's headed our way, water, non-perishables, and things like that. So there's more information on our website. And now's the time to think about, okay, so this is what I need if I'm going to stay. And this is where I'm going to go, or how I'm going to leave, or where I'm going to go if I decide to evacuate. So you have your plan in order. I've got 3 young kids. Obviously, I'm busy with the weather when it happens. So we have our stuff that we need when we're home, and then we're going to Maryland, where I grew up, or family in Columbia, South Carolina, if it's depending on the track. So we have our plan. There's no, what should we do? It's, we're going, this is where we're going, or we're staying, and we've got stuff for a week so that we'll be on our own. We don't need help or anything like that. So that's good information on the website. I keep mentioning the website because, again, weather.gov/moreheadcity, you can get all of this. At the end, I will provide my email address for those in person. For those at home, you're going to hear from me by the end of today with a link to the YouTube. So you're going to have my email. If this doesn't make sense, email me. At the bottom, I mentioned that there's a bunch of icons, and one of them is called Weather Hazard Briefing. If there's bad weather, hurricane, severe weather, winter storm, we put out a briefing on that information. It's a PDF, quick document on what's going to happen with the upcoming storm. If it's a sunny day, if it's quiet weather, you're not going to see anything on that page. But it's real good information for upcoming storms, and that includes hurricanes. So biggest part of that, weather.gov/moreheadcity for your forecast information. And if you scroll to the bottom, click on the tropical icon, that will send you to the our tropical page, which has preparedness tips and a lot of stuff that I'm going to show you coming up. So how many have seen the graphic on the left? Maybe not with spaghetti on it, but how many have seen those track maps? We're all guilty, right? We see it on social media, and oh, here comes a storm 2 weeks from now, right? So I want you to focus on the one on the right, official sources of information. The one on the left has some utility. What it is it shows different possibilities for various models of what might happen. So in the lower right, where all the models are on top of each other, we're very confident. It's only from lower right to upper left is kind of the timeline. So they're all overlapped. Very, very consistent forecasts. It's going to happen in terms of the track. But as you get toward the coast, notice how some of those models take it toward Florida and some are off the coast. This is where, if you're not a trained professional, you don't know what it means, it doesn't have utility. If you're in Florida, which one are you focusing on? The one that hits you. If you're here, which one you're like, oh, there's some coming at us, some are coming out. So when they spread out like that, that's showing that we're not confident, that the models are kind of all over the place. But we don't want people looking at that online because they just pick one track and they stick to it. Hey, it's going to hit us or it's not going to hit us. The men and women at the Hurricane Center, over 175 years of experience, they're making that graphic on the right. That's the one you should be paying attention to. It's taking into account the spaghetti models and the European model and the American model. And it's making adjustments based on experience. So please, you can do your part at home, share trusted sources of information. Doesn't mean it's always right, but it is the most in-depth, accurate forecast you're going to get from an official source. So, well, of course, I got to say that, right? I'm from the Weather Service. Why would I come here and say, hey, these spaghetti models, or look at this? I want to show you some statistics to back up why this is an accurate forecast. So I want to compare 1999 to 2019 with Dorian. This graph shows the average error for a 3-day forecast. If I'm talking to Jason back in 1999, even though I was in Maryland and community college at the time, but if we were talking to Jason in 99 and the hurricane was 3 days away, I could tell him in 1999 that the center could pass somewhere from Southeast Virginia through the Carolinas or Eastern Georgia. In other words, a wide error. Isn't that crazy? I mean, you think of our advances in technology, it kind of reminds me of that. In 2019, the year Dorian hit, I would be able to tell Jason the center of the storm should move somewhere over Southeast North Carolina. So much smaller error. So our error for forecasting the track has gotten a lot smaller. So it's become more accurate for sure. Recently, this is an example comparing our forecast, the Hurricane Center, to various computer models. So you want to have an accurate forecast, but you also want to be consistent. You don't want to say it's going to hit us, it's not going to hit us, it's going to be Charleston, it's going to be Nags Head. You don't want the windshield wiper effect. And that's where a human comes in and will make some small changes to adjust it left or right. So on this graph, on the bottom is consistency. So the farther you get to the right, you're inconsistent, very, very low error, but you're inconsistent. And then the y-axis on the left is error. So you want to be in that lower left corner, consistent and least amount of error. And what dot is closest to that? NHC, and that's the National Hurricane Center. As you go to the upper right, you're getting a little more inconsistent, a little bit more error. The ECMWF, that's the European model. The GFS is the American, and the UK Met. So those are models we use, but then you take the human element, a little more consistent, a little more accurate. So just to show you that perspective. So we've gotten really good at the track forecasting. So should you only rely on that and think that nothing can change? No. There can be small wiggles and the forecast can be accurate. We can still be in the path, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And just a slight adjustment to whether the storm hits Jacksonville to our left and we're on the right side, or it hits Cape Lookout makes all the difference in the world where we're standing in Pine Knoll shores. And I see the mayor and others nodding their head. We know this, but again, we've been in the area, so we know this. But get to the folks at home or the new folks that, hey, please continue to pay attention, and small things can make all the difference in the world. No two storms are alike. So please don't say, hey, I've been through Florence and nothing happened, so it's not going to happen again. That mentality, things can just slightly shift and makes all the difference in the world. So this might be easier to see at home, probably harder for you here in the audience. But the purple line on this is the official track of Hurricane Laura last year. That is what actually happened. The dotted blue line to the left is what happens if it had adjusted 20 miles to the left, or west in this case. Small adjustment. Jacksonville, Emerald Isle, like a small little wiggle room, right? The area in pink on this graphic, I have to get close, my eyes aren't as good, 5 to 10 feet higher storm surge with just that 20-mile adjustment. So again, the blue line on the left is, hey, if it shifted a little bit, what would happen? To the immediate right of that track, 5 to 10 feet higher storm surge. Look at the blue. This is southern Louisiana. 10 to 15 feet higher storm surge in those areas with just a 20-mile shift. So all this is showing you is the purple line is what happened, but if it has shifted just a little bit to the left, the people on the right side of that storm will be really, really impacted. So little wobbles certainly matter for the forecast. And we say that because, again, each storm is different. No two storms are alike. Just because you made it, and we had this issue with Florence. A lot of people said, hey, I've been through hurricanes before. Arthur, Irene was certainly a bad one, but the center was to our right. We were on the left side of the storm, the weaker side of the storm. That was not the case with Florence. And those little shifts do make a big, big difference. So I mentioned our website, weather.gov/moreheadcity. I also want to mention the Hurricane Center website. You can get to it either way. You can go to hurricanes.gov, or you can go to our local page, scroll to the bottom, click on tropical, and you'll get the same stuff. This is a tropical weather outlook. As I loaded up this presentation, I saw there's a slight chance of something in the next 5 days. We won't even get into that, but this is what the outlook is designed for. Over the next 5 days, 4 times a day it will be updated. Where are there chances that something could form? It might not have a name yet. It might not even be on the Weather Channel or your local news, but it's just if you want to wake up every day and be aware of what's happening in the week to 10 days to come, at the Hurricane Center website or ours, you want to look at the tropical weather outlook. Really, really good information. So who has seen this before? The hurricane path. So again, we want you to look at this. It's the official forecast. This represents just the most probable path for the center of the storm. It doesn't tell you who's going to be impacted and who will not. So a lot of times people see that path and think, I'm in the path, I'm going to be impacted. Oh, I'm on the edge, I don't have to worry about it. This is just where we think the center of the storm is going to go. Did Florence only make impact at Wrightsville Beach? No. Is a hurricane a dot on a map and nobody else has to worry about it? No. Impacts are far away from the center. And the example, this is Florence. Look at the lower right. That orange circle, that's the tropical storm force wind field. Notice how that extends well beyond the path. So again, this cone map is for if you're anywhere in the general vicinity, you should be paying attention. And you will notice it's very narrow compared to past years, and that's because the accuracy has gotten better. But we don't want people to think, like in this scenario, down toward Myrtle Beach, they're on the edge of the path here. We don't want them to think, oh, I'm not going to be impacted by Florence just because of that. So real good information to know. A couple other Hurricane Center graphics that show up on our website in our briefings, and then we're going to end with our impacts in the area. This is one that's very useful for first responders, emergency managers, folks thinking about evacuations. This is the earliest time of arrival for tropical storm force winds. Real fancy term for worst case scenario. When is it the earliest it could happen that we have 39 mile per hour winds? That's when you should complete your preparations. If you're deciding to evacuate, that's when you should do so. It's a worst case scenario. Hey, so for me, working long days during a hurricane, that's for me to know, hey, when do I have to have everything tidied up around the home? The furniture pulled in, whatever I need to do. This is my drop dead deadline. So in this example, it says Wednesday at 8 p.m. We still like to have some uncertainty in the forecast. So I would say the earliest reasonable time is sometime Wednesday evening. If you complete your plans by Wednesday evening, you're going to be in good shape. The other graphic is the most likely time. That is, this is when we actually expect the winds to pick up. And this is from Isaias, or this is from Arthur last year, excuse me. And again, I'll use a general term. So it says Monday, 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. I would say sometime Monday evening on that graphic. All right, now we're going to get into the meat and the end of the presentation. Remember our website, weather.gov/moreheadcity. And remember, don't focus on just the category. So at home, I can't see you, but I can see you in person. Raise your hand if you have ever said or heard a friend or neighbor say, I'm not going to leave unless it's a cat 2. I'm not going to leave unless it's a 3. Or I've been through a 2 or 3 before and it was nothing. So one more slide, Christian. The Saffir-Simpson scale is a wind scale only. It's very good for wind. It tells us how strong the storm is based on wind. Eric did not say, hey, don't worry about the category scale. 4 is just a number. No, it's a good thing for a wind scale, but it does not say anything about how much rain you have. So on this graphic, it doesn't say that Florence was going to produce 20 to 30 inches of rain. It didn't say that it was going to stay over us for multiple days. It doesn't say how large the storm is. It doesn't say where the storm is hitting. All those factors are important on the impact where you live. So it is a tool in your toolkit. It is a piece of the puzzle. It is not the whole thing. Respect the category, but do not make this the end-all be-all on what you're going to do. If you're going to evacuate, you're going to stay, or if it's going to be significant for us. And again, we like to back stuff up with statistics. Unfortunately, we've been busy in the country, so we have a lot of those statistics. So 2010 to 2019, we had a lot of just category 1s, right? Do you remember the names? Again, I can't see as well. Irene, Sandy, Hermine, Matthew, Florence, Dorian. You remember those storms, right? They were just 1s. So 175 direct deaths because of just 1s during that time frame, and over $100 billion of damage. So emphasizing it's just the category is only related to wind. So please pass that on. When you hear somebody say, it's just a 1, you know, it's going to be a lot of rain. It's going to stick over us. It's more than just what the category it is itself. So this is how we're going to end the presentation. We're going to go over all of the impacts that you can get. And by choice, we ordered it this way. The biggest impacts are usually water related, and you have less impacts with regards to wind. Can you have tree damage? Can you have a tornado? Yes, but by and large, it's water. That is the biggest issues with any tropical cyclone. So this is an older graphic. 1963 to 2012. During that time frame, about half of deaths with a tropical cyclone were from storm surge, and about a third were rain. So when you add in marine and rip currents and surf, it was a tremendous amount of loss of life because of water. About 90% during that time frame was water related. If you squint and look way at the bottom of the graph, 8% were wind. Could a tree fall in a house? Could a tree fall in a car and kill you? Yes, but majority speaking, during that time frame, it was water, 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 and especially storm surge. Well, Eric, you know, it's 2021. Can you show us something different than 2012 graphics? We can. 2016 to 2018, 83% water related. So 90, 83. So still a lot of water related. We have made improvements with storm surge. Only about 4% during that time frame was storm surge, and that's impressive given what we have with Florence and New Bern and here, you know, along the coast, and with Dorian on Ocracoke. 2016 to 2018, during that same time, where we need to improve is communication. We're a science-based organization. We will continue to try to get the forecast right and get better. But you saw that cone map. We only have so much more we can do, right? But me doing these talks, our office doing these talks, Jason having us out, this is what is important. More than half of the deaths during that time frame were in vehicles. They were preventable deaths. It wasn't water came up and they were caught off guard. It was going across a road around a barricade that was set up. It was driving on a road late at night and you see water, I can get through it. The road's washed out. You didn't know that. So these are preventable deaths in our community. So please, you know, get that message out. Turn around, don't drown. Don't go around flooded roads or anything like that, because water is certainly very, very powerful. The latest statistics last year continue to show it. 2020, 31 of the 47 deaths were water related. That includes surf and rip, what we're going to talk about here in a second, along with a couple storm surge as well. So it's water, water, water. The example with Florence and the science on the left is the 5-day forecast, that bullseye of pink and magenta, 20 to 30 inches of rain, well predicted. The curvy little line that kind of comes into Wrightsville Beach, that is the track. On the right is what happened. So on the left is predicted, on the right is what happened. We expected 20 to 30 and we got 20 to 30. So the science was very good. We still had folks die. And 16 of them, flood-wise, were in vehicles. So again, it's a messaging. Please help us get that out with regards to water. So we talked about rainfall flooding, or just water in general. Storm surge, very, very powerful. You know, a lot of surge up toward New Bern and also Ocracoke with Dorian. The impressive thing about Ocracoke was the rate of rise. A lot of folks don't realize that storm surge is the water that's pushed ahead of the storm, generated by the winds out over the ocean. And it's not just this little quick rise of water, it can come up very quick and catch you off guard with that. So we're all in proximity to the coast. If you're a low-lying area, this is things you should be paying attention to. How will I know that we're gonna have storm surge? We issue watches and warnings for that. That's the type of alert that you will get on your phone automatically, just like a tornado or a hurricane warning. If it's greater than 3 feet above normally dry ground, fancy term for I live in a low-lying area, I'm adjacent to water, bow sound, the ocean, and it's usually dry where I'm standing. Now it's going to be 3, 4, 5 feet. And again, I'm 6 feet. When we're talking 3, 4, 5 feet, that's a tremendous height of water. Very, very dangerous. So you'll get watches and warnings. On our website, via the Hurricane Center, there'll be a map like this. And this is a reasonable worst case scenario of what could happen. In this example, this is up the Neuse River for Florence, greater than 9 feet expected. Not everywhere will see that. This takes into account the wobbles, slight changes in direction. We don't want people to be caught off guard. But somewhere in there, we'll see a worst case scenario, and that's what we saw with Florence. And again, no two storms are alike. I know that we had bigger impacts, some areas like Swansboro, than we did with Irene. You know, but in New Bern, we had worse impacts with Florence than Irene. It just depends how the water flows up the creek, how the water flows up the sound. But this reasonable worst case is a good, you know, heads up for if you're at risk for that storm surge issue. Starting last year and continuing this year, there is a graphic that's used on social media. We will share this. And this is kind of the 50,000 foot level. Hey, in this general area, we should worry about, you know, X, Y, Z, or how much a storm surge. So that's an experimental graphic that will continue. So we talked about rainfall flooding. We talked about storm surge. We're at the beach. Talk about beach safety with regards to rip currents. In 2019, the second deadliest storm was Lorenzo. Yeah, I remember Lorenzo. I remember Dorian and Florence the year before Lorenzo. It never hit here. It certainly didn't hit here. It was 2,000 miles away. Real strong storm. I think it was into October. Nice weekend. Folks come down to the beach. Long period swell. You know, very strong wave energy generated from a distant storm. And we had 8 rip current deaths along the East Coast and 4 in North Carolina alone. So during the midst of the storm, okay, we're not talking about people swimming during that time, but you're a family from Ohio, you're down here for a week, and the storm is 4 days away. Oh, yeah, it's not gonna get here till Monday, I don't have to worry about it. However, ahead of the storm or after the storm, the water is very dangerous. So please get that message out, even if it's a sunny weekend day. And we're trying to get better at this messaging. And this is, you know, you guys do an excellent job. Social media, sharing our stuff, that's what we're talking about. So we will put this in briefings. You know, before we focus wind, rain, that's all important, but we will put in rip current as an impact because that is one of the many impacts that can occur with any tropical cyclone. So just some general beach safety tips. Always swimming by a beach that's lifeguarded would be a recommendation. Heeding the flags, knowing what they mean. Staying out of the water when it's dangerous, calling for help instead of trying to go out and be the helper. I know it's very, very difficult if you see somebody struggling, but getting help, calling 911, getting assistance from the lifeguards or fire rescue, much better steps to take in terms of beach safety. As far as messaging goes, we do have some social media graphics. Christian, can you advance it one? So this is what we show on social media because everybody knows the beach they go to. They might not know the towns as much, but beach names and beach towns. So we'll highlight that red, yellow, or gray because there's always risk. The ocean is always an inherent risk, and we'll try to match that up with our rip current forecast. And that particular graphic was shared like a busy, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday, really good weather. But again, it was a distant storm type of thing and high impact we felt on the beaches. As we wrap things up, again, water, rainfall, surge, rip currents. This is my neighborhood during Florence, so we certainly saw wind with Florence. And one of the worst aspects was the longevity. 70, 80, 90 mile per hour winds are bad, but when you get the rain and it continues to be wind, those trees slowly uproot. A couple shingles you lose, and the storm gets in and out, no big deal, but when it's still raining and you can't get a tarp up, much bigger issue. So wind can certainly be an issue, and the category scale is a good reflection of that in terms of how bad just wind can be. Just to hammer home the category part, Hurricane Arthur 2014, Category 2 storm. This is the wind map across our area. Landfall, you know, just east of here, really between here and Cape Lookout. So 90 mile per hour winds, almost 100 by Cape Lookout. So real strong winds at landfall and to the right. That's where the strongest winds are. So Outer Banks got it, but for the majority of our area, especially where we're standing west, it's not really a big deal. But it was a Category 2 storm, fast moving, small. Advanced one, Christian. How many remember Irene? Similar landfall, no tricks. It didn't hit over in Jacksonville, again, between roughly here and Cape Lookout. So much wider spread winds, 60, 70 miles per hour, even inland, close to 100 again down where we are, but it was a slow moving storm. It was a large storm, so we had issues with surge over a much wider area. So just hammering home that point, and it's not something you have to sit at home and say, I wonder what the rip risk is or flooding. I can figure this out and this out. It's going to be in those briefings. It's going to be on social media. We're going to talk about those things. And just remember that no two storms are alike. We could see that with Arthur and Irene. Depending on where it hits, that right side of the storm is usually the worst. So it really depends on exactly where it hits. And And we don't know that as accurate as the forecast timing is with the south-facing shore, just a little jog is Cape Lookout or Emerald Isle or Onslow Beach. Just a small deviation makes all the difference in the world. Last one we're going to talk about are tornadoes. That's from Emerald Isle in 2019 with Dorian. Any cyclone can have tornadoes. Doesn't have to be a hurricane. We saw that with Tropical Storm Hermine. It's naturally spinning. Claudette was a nothing storm, right? But I remember showing the kids that morning up toward Columbia when we woke up first thing Monday morning, I guess it was. You could see this thing spinning. So it's naturally spinning, so it's not hard to surmise that you can get tornadoes. So they can produce enhanced areas of damage. No kidding, tornado does that. But they can occur well away from the center. Dorian was, I think, another 12, 14 hours away from even making landfall. It might have even been more. And that first outer band that came on shore, that was when we had our tornado. So we go back to the 39-mile-per-hour winds, preparing for the worst case. We don't tell you to evacuate or not, but I would rather see you next year at this talk than not. I would rather you take the advice of the local officials and pay attention to all of these threats than not. So please take it serious, because with our proximity to the coast, we certainly get those storms. To hammer home that the impacts occur well away from the center, go back to Florence. That red arrow is Wrightsville Beach. A hurricane is not a dot on the map. Those are all the tornadoes that occur with Florence, and those dots up toward the top are Richmond, Virginia, days later. So impacts occur well away, and it's not just where the landfall is that we should be focused on. So as I wrap up the last two slides, we'll talk about our new messaging. I shouldn't say new, but just we're always constantly trying to improve. So the storm surge deaths have gone down, so we're doing well with that. Indirect deaths. So last year with Laura, 7 people died directly due to the storm. Big storm. 34 were indirect. So things like carbon monoxide, 16 died from that. In the last 4 years, we've lost more people to carbon monoxide poisoning than storm surge. So storm surge was our biggest killer overall. We've improved there, but not to let your guard down. You've got your kit, you're staying, you're leaving, whatever you're doing. Now the storm is gone. It's not over yet. Being careful about being on a ladder, not having your generator inside, listening to the safety tips that these first responders to my right are always preaching. And again, tell a neighbor. That might be the first time they have a generator. They moved from up north. I love the snow, and we didn't need a generator for no power for 7 days. So, we know these things, but folks don't, and you just have to educate them, and then they will teach others. So it's real good information. And in terms of deaths, more likely older age when you get beyond the carbon monoxide is cardiovascular issues, heart issues. So this graphic is just showing it's usually over 60, 8 times as more likely than somebody under 21 years old. And that is it. So that is my email. So in person, if you want to jot it down, I've got my business card as well. At home, we're going to put this recording on YouTube later today. So all of it you will see. You have a PDF copy of the presentation and the handouts. So there's many ways to get my email beyond writing it down. So at this point, I'm going to move the camera over, and Jason and I are going to kind of slide over to the computer so we can take any questions. So in the audience and at home, if you have a really hard question, Jason will take those, and I'll take the cream puff ones. But at home, if you've got any questions, I'm going to load it up now. We'll go through kind of the ones in the audience, and at home, any written questions. And again, you can do that at the question window. And then if you're really brave at home and you raise your hand, I will call on you. I'll say, hey, Joe, I'm going to unmute you. Then on your end, you unmute it, and you can ask an audio question, and we will hear that on the computer. So let's give this a go. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. We'll just do the camera. So we got one comment from earlier. They couldn't see what pointing to, but they should see the presentation. So I don't see any questions from the audience. So we'll give you a chance to ask any if you have it. Anybody in the room have any questions? Again, the hard ones go to Jason.
What's the strongest tornado that was ever spawned from the cyclone?
And I'll answer that one, Jason. I'm just looking.
That's definitely you.
Yeah, so, and some of them I just don't know. So, and I'll repeat the question just to make sure, since the mic is facing us. So the gentleman in the audience asked, what is the strongest tornado from like a cyclone or tropical system? I'm not sure exact, but usually they tend to be zeros and ones. The scale goes 0 to 5, and they tend to be the lower end. That the Emerald Isle one was kind of on the low to medium size. So usually 0s to 1s. And not the EF3, 4, 5 that you see out in the Midwest. So they tend to be smaller, quicker, and not the big ones. But what happens is they produce damage where you otherwise might not get it. So you're far away from the center. You got tropical storm force winds, just not a big deal. But then a tornado comes by, and 0s, 1s, and 2s is kind of like 70 to 110 miles per hour. So it produces isolated bad damage. So I'd say if I had to guess, probably no more than a 2 usually.
Eric, where do we sit on the sea buoys, the data buoys that you guys have out in Onslow Bay? I'm thinking in terms of rip current, wave frequency, all that business. We were down to 1 a couple of years ago. Or we still just have that 1?
I'm not 100% sure. I know in my email there's some chatter in the last week or two about one coming back online. It might be like an educational one that we can use, so we're working to get more back online. And the other advance with that is a rip current model that we've used kind of in the past internally has been made public now, that uses modeling for rip current. So definitely making more improvements with observations and forecast.
I want to hit a couple of points.
Yeah.
First off, from a fire chief perspective, but even more so, just you've lived here all my life, just a couple of points. Some of them are PKS specific, but then some of them are, backing up what Eric says about people's misconceptions, and some of the stuff that we hear is, people, one, biggest paying attention to the category number and disregarding it because it's a 1. That's one of the biggest things that we see, and you really shouldn't. Ophelia was a 1, but there is 05, come right here, PKS, and Ike over here remembers that one. John Broman probably sat on your house at that point in time, but it sat there 24 hours on our beats and just beat us to death. And people were like, so the biggest thing I got out of that was people were so shocked. So, oh, just category 1. Well, yeah, it depends on where they strike. It so much depends on where they strike. And that Louisiana graphic that Eric put up showing that little 20-mile jog, the consequences of a 20-mile jog to the west and what it would have done, that's even like 10 times amplified here because we stick out like a sore thumb. And the right front quadrant, anything on the right of the storm is bad. And if it just goes 10 miles to comes in Emerald Isle, we get the full beat out of us. But if it jogs over to Cape Lookout, we do all right. I think it was Dorian that Ocracoke had such a horrible time with. It didn't even act. We hardly felt that one, and then Ocracoke got destroyed. If that thing would have moved west of us, that could have been final George. So don't disregard them. Pay attention to the tracks. If you're sitting on the edge of the probability cone, that's another good one. We're on the edge of the cone. I think we're going to be just fine. Don't pay attention to that. I hear that a lot as well. So just people disregarding them or dismissing them because of where what a cone says, or the category number is one of the hugest things ever. The fire department does not get special intel briefs from these guys. Everybody, it's no big one here. Well, what have you heard? Because they think we're getting some kind of backdoor briefings. We get pulled into NOAA and told all this
the secret room.
The secret room, yeah. The information's out there. The reason Eric's giving you his email address and giving you websites and stuff is because the information is there. The same information that we're going to see, you guys can see. You just have to go online and pay attention to it. We're still early kind of in the season, but like Eric says, we can get them in May and we can get them as late as November. We usually try to plan around May, June time frame for this, but you know, sometimes I think it was Arthur, like we'd already been struck when we did our briefing. So, but the time to start prepping and planning is like now, is actually February, you know, March. Kind of have a plan, figure out what you're going to do, where you're going to go. If you're going to leave, where you're going to go. My point about evacuating is do not stop in Havelock, do not stop in Kinston, definitely do not stop in Kinston. And you know, go on the other side of Raleigh somewhere. Go over to Boone. Go to I can't remember the name of the Greensboro, Burlington, that area. You know, get away from the coast. Get away from the coastal plain. Basically, it is a coastal flood plain. You know, get over there towards the mountains and the foothills, and you'll have a lot better time. Stuff kind of more specific, the PKS and stuff that we worry about is citizens that are choosing to stay. A couple of programs here, or one program here that we do is called Hurricane Good Neighbor Program. CERT runs that for us, Civilian Emergency Response Team. But basically, in a nutshell, if you're going to stay, you can call. We'll have a line set up. You can call, give us your name, your address, and how many persons are staying in your house, and you go on a list. And after the storm's over, we'll go and we'll make checks on those houses that we have actually reported. We're trying to check them all, but we'll prioritize hitting those houses to make sure that we get them. We check and everything's okay. You know, I always recommend evacuating, but you know, a lot of times people say, oh, I'm gonna ride it out. Well, okay, just let us know where you're at. If you have any kind of medical issues, again, Eric hit that a little bit, cardiac type stuff, but there's other things. If you're a dialysis patient or you know, high risk medical condition, please do not stay. The county does what they call a medically fragile program. You can get the sign up sheets up at the fire department. But basically, your name goes into a database, and they keep track, and they know where the medically fragile people are at. They know what you need for your medical condition, and they know what hospital you should be taken to that can treat you the best for your medical condition. You know, if you stay on board here, we might not be able to get you off the island if something happens. If you're, you know, dialysis patient or something, we might not be able to get you out to get you treated. So, you know, definitely, you know, sign up for that program. If you need assistance evacuating, the county can help with that as well. It is part of medically fragile. Some elderly folks, you know, that might not be as mobile and their kids live off, something like that. They can help transportation wise as far as that is concerned. Hurricane reentry passes. I'd always hit on reentry passes. It's a big one for the island, big one for us. At this point in time, just lay your hand on your reentry pass and make sure that you know where it's at. You have it. And then I guess the last thing I have is something that was really neat to me was Eric hitting on carbon monoxide and the deaths caused by carbon monoxide after a storm. And a lot of times that is people bringing their generators inside, which is a very bad idea. But then I think possibly a contributing factor is like carbon monoxide up north in the northern states is a very known killer, very hazardous killer. And we're just really starting to see more people like getting carbon monoxide detectors in their homes in the south. But definitely, if you have any kind of gas appliance, anything like that in your house, you definitely should have carbon monoxide detectors in your home. And just never, ever, ever bring your generator inside your home or in your garage. They should be outside. That's about all I have, Eric. I think somebody asked a question though.
Any more? Let's see. I turned this off so we don't have to. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah. That might be directed at the PowerPoints I usually give.
Oh, okay.
but didn't have it. It was a question about you talking current positions. PowerPoint is visible while you're mentioning specifics of the slides. I usually do a slide program for mine. I really want this year. We had last year COVID, and we did a virtual that I thought went really awesome. And I guess you guys tapped into the hybrid.
Yeah.
Way to bring more people in, which is really cool.
So the one person asking the question too asked earlier, if you had trouble seeing the PowerPoint, we didn't have any other comments. So there's a way that you can make the screen full screen, like you don't even have to see us. The webcam should be real small. If you had any trouble viewing any of it, it looks like the recording works. So we will post this to YouTube, and you should be able to see the slides just fine, because we haven't heard anything else. So it might be a tech issue on your end.
I was watching on mine and it looked really good.
Okay. So any brave souls out there
Yeah.
that have an audio question, just raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Again, it would be just like you're hearing anybody in the audience. Any other questions?
Can I mention two things?
Sure.
Can they hear me?
If you come on, you can come up and stand up.
They don't need to see me. I'll just talk from here so they can hear me. Probably in terms of communication within Pine Knoll Shores, if anyone here is not signed up for our constant contact email list, please do that. And Jason's folks can tell you how to do that, or anyone in town hall. And we always send out Eric's severe weather update. And that's probably the most important thing you should tab, because that has all the graphics that he just showed. Most importantly, the most likely time of arrival. So sign up for the constant contact, please, so you're getting our messages, which has Eric's information on there, and tab that link as far as that. But
That's good. And what we can do, if you just email me that link.
Okay.
So in the follow-up, I'll attach the PDF. We'll have the link to the recording. So again, if you had to step away, or maybe you're just joining us, then we'll have that link as well. And any links you want, I'll put in the email.
That's fine. And I do the constant contact in there.
So I think we're good. Any questions from the audience? Yes, Christian.
What's the farthest impact away from a hurricane? Like, is it 2 states away, 1 state away? How
So-
bad?
All right, so the question was, what's the farthest impact from any tropical cyclone? It can be 300, 400, 500 miles. So that one graphic we showed you, Florence hit down by Wrightsville Beach, but we had impacts up in Richmond. So these storms can be 300 to 500 miles across, the large ones. So the impacts can be that far. And you just reminded me of something. That's landfalling cyclones. We showed you the one graphic, Lorenzo, that was 2,000 miles away. So if you're talking about landfalling, 300, 500 miles, but Jason, the Lorenzo thing was 2,000.
And a lot of times we'll see on the Lorenzo one, a lot of times you will end up red flagging the beaches because that guy's creating rip currents on our beach. But our beach looks nice. It'll be a pretty beach, and everybody thinks, why you red flagging for whatever, but it is because that hurricane's way out there, and it is making very strong rips on our beach.
The Weather Channel is a source of information for a lot of people, but it's also a form of entertainment. And I think sometimes I hear from a lot of people that they get their information from the Weather Channel, and the Weather Channel always hypes these storms, so they tend to disregard anything. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Yeah, so I would just say, stick to the local sources. The Weather Channel is a good communicator of what's happening on a national level. So a lot of times you'll hear about all these storms, but since you're hearing about them over and over again, it might seem like it's a little too much. So you could use it as a resource to be aware, hey, there's something I need to pay attention to. And then when it's in our general vicinity, that's when you shift to the local. Doesn't mean we're better or worse. It just means you're going to have access to more detailed information, because I live in Cape Carteret and I work in Newport. This is our community, so that's how I would frame that.
Yeah, I definitely stay local. I'm nothing wrong with Weather Channel. It is a form of entertainment, but when it comes to wanting to know what's going on. I want the guys right there in Newport that are at my back door, telling me what's getting ready to happen to me.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that there's a category system, but is there another way to bring hurricanes that takes everything into account and not just the wind speed?
So he's off camera, but my son came today to help with the tech aspect. So he always asks the toughest questions, and it's an interesting question. So the question asked was, the Saffir Simpson scale does a category for hurricanes, and it's only wind related. So he asked, is there some type of scale that would take it all into account? And the answer is, we're working on it. However, the wheels of government are very slow, and it's part of a larger organization, the World Meteorological Organization. So it's something that's all encompassing. So there's been talk about it because yes, it would be nice to have a scale that would take into account everything, the wind, the surge. So we're working on it. We'll see how long it takes. But rather than wait, because I think it'll be a long time, that's why we do stuff like this and messaging. So good question. I told you, save the tough ones for Jason.
Yeah. You get the size of those guys, and you get a category 4 that's like really concentrated, a narrow eye, such strong winds pushing up. It might not be pushing as much water as a Cat 1 that's 1,000 miles wide, and like I say, water's the big killer, but they have great storm surge resources on NOAA. It's just a matter of going on there, and you can go down and take a look at your address and see what kind of category storms or what level rise affects your property on there. It's really good info.
And Jason, for our sound front people, if we're fortunate and landfall is Cape Lookout, so we're in the safer quadrant. Then with Irene as an example, our sound front people get hammered. And Irene, much less widespread damage than Florence because of the direction of the storm relative to the town. But virtually every dock on the sound front went away.
Hey,
So if it's Cape Lookout and you're on the sound front, I know shores. And these calls for extreme preparation.
Noosh does the same. It's like it's just the way that wind's pushing up the rivers, pushing up into the sound stuff. And then if it depends what tide it comes in on, it's a whole gamut of things and factors and that you pay attention to. And you'll see the guys like, one of the big ones is what tide is this thing going to hit on?
Yes.
It's a full moon and a king tide, or
So much.
yeah, it's a huge ball of information and the way it's going to affect you. But everybody gets on a Cat 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
So much more.
And there's so much more to it.
Jason brought up an interesting point. I kind of forgot about this. We don't get into the weeds before a storm, but Florence was a 4. A real powerful storm like that is very compact, small area impacted. So if it came in as a 4, we wouldn't have had the widespread rain. We wouldn't have as much. We would have had really bad surge just near and to the right of the landfall itself. Like a bowling ball, just a lot of energy coming in, smaller impacted area, but more devastating where it hit. As it weakened, or as it decreased wind strength, the wind field, instead of being real tight and concentric, actually spread out. So we had a larger area that was impacted by wind, rain, and surge. Maybe we had the magnitude of New Bern, but the magnitude was lessened, but it was spread out over a larger area. But all those nuances you mentioned, like depending on the storm track, it could be sound side, ocean side, it could be both. There's just a lot of things to take into account. So don't just focus on the category.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like in Florence, you mentioned if it had been tighter, we wouldn't have had as much rain or impact. But like, where actually does the rain come from? Does that just come from the conditions in the storm locally? I mean, was Florence sucking up all this moisture right from the ocean?
So
it came ashore?
Yep, and so hurricanes get their energy from the ocean, so it gets that moisture and the showers and storms from the ocean itself. But it's not like a black hole that there's other factors going on, and there's other weather patterns, high pressure that blocked it. So it had a lot of moisture with it, but if it was an intense, smaller storm, it probably would have just moved along and in and out, like our normal ones, in and out. We're not here for days. but because of high pressure to the north that kind of blocked it and weakened it, it slowed it down and it just stayed here stationary. So it had all that rain, but it just didn't move. It just stayed here for days. That was the big issue for sure.
200 miles wide, 4 miles an hour.
Yeah, we could have, even me, I could have run faster than that.
Yeah, it's gonna sit on you and beat you to death.
So I think we're good, Jason. I don't see anything. There's still a lot of attendees online, so appreciate you staying online. I don't see any questions in the question box, no hand raised, so I think we're good from the virtual audience. Any other questions in person? All right, we'll sign off for virtual folks. Thank you. And again, you will get a PDF later today and I'll upload this to YouTube. So thank you very much for attending. I'll shut this down.
Thank you, Eric.